thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to have you here. We did some research on Mayor Quintero and what he's accomplished since he has been mayor. I'm going to do just a brief background on you, Mayor Quintero. If I get anything wrong, just say, hey, Chris, you got it all wrong, or whatever. But thank you so much for being here today, sir. We truly appreciate you.
I appreciate all of you and what you do for our economy and for, frankly, the clients that you have. Not only are you helping people out in their individual capacity or commercial capacity, but because of the work you do, you help breathe life into our community. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we do our best.
We appreciate what you've been doing.
We need your support as well. So thank you very much for your support. Hey, let me tell you a little bit about Mayor Quintero and his background. First and foremost, he's a graduate from UC Riverside, poli-sci major.
Yes.
As undergrad, went on to a career at UCLA Law. Fantastic. From there, you've done so much, and I was actually, we were kind of not really joking about it, but it's amazing to see one individual to be able to accomplish so much
in such a short amount of time.
In 24-hour period of time. It's amazing to me. But let me share a little bit about Mayor Quintero. Mayor Quintero was not only extremely active at UC Riverside in I'm going to say the student politics end. Also, you were then went into student politics for not only UC Riverside, but the entire UC system, and represented as president.
Good job.
When I was 19 years old, yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Again.
Fantastic. From there, you went on to UCLA Law School. You did a stint up in, you were actually asked to be a, forgive me.
Senate fellow.
A fellow up at, in Sacramento, and you were the fellow for Senator
Joe Dunn.
Joe Dunn,
Wow.
exactly. So
Seriously
impressive there. From there, you went into Hondo as on their board of directors. And it sounds like at Rio Hondo, you guys did amazing things for not only the community, but for the students, and getting those students engaged, taking care of them, helping them out financially. Some of the other things maybe that you did at Rio Hondo, share. It's amazing.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, if you mind, if you don't mind, I'll get into this. And
please do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please do.
So let me start off with how I got into this journey to begin with. I was 16 years old, and many of you have veterans in your communities, right? And you either have a VFW or American Legion or something of that sort. Well, in Armani, we have American Legion Post 261. And they nominated me to go to a program up in Sacramento called Boys State. Now on Apple Plus, there's actually a documentary that's getting a lot of attention now about Boys State in Texas. If you want to learn about what the program is like, you can see that. But I went there in 1991, and I had lost every single election you can imagine in high school and in middle school. It was actually kind of a running joke with my my friends in school. And I went to Boys State, and at Boys State, you could run for city council, you can run for supervisor, you can even run for governor or legislature. So I decided I was going to run for governor. A crazy notion when you think that there's 1,000 boys from all across the state there, and there's no chance. I mean, I've lost every election. There's no way I'm going to win, right? Well, by 24 votes, I got elected Boys State governor, and then had the opportunity of a lifetime to go to Boys Nation in Washington, D.C. Wow. The same program that President Bill Clinton participated in when he was a young man, the program where he met John F. Kennedy. Wow. And so for me, it was like literally like winning the lottery. The trajectory of my life completely changed from that point forward. I went to UC Riverside at 19. I was president of all the UC students throughout the state, and then eventually student body president. And there were a number of issues at the time that were happening. SB 1 and SB 2, Proposition 209, that repeal is going to be on the ballot right now. So imagine that. This is from back then when I was a student. I'm 45 years old now. But a lot of the experiences that I had there with transfer students, with trying to get more students from our community into four-year universities really inspired me. I went to law school, I had a stint up in Sacramento for Joe Dunn, a wonderful member of the legislature from Orange County. And then I came back, finished off my, not just my law degree, but my master's in urban planning as well. And what inspired me to run for Rio Hondo is I saw a story in the LA Times that showed that Rio Hondo was one of the worst transfer schools around. And so I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to see more children from our community go to a four-year university. So I got elected there. I got to serve 2 terms. We passed a bond, $300 million worth of bond work had been done with that bond. The campus is improved. The relationships with the local community schools were improved. We had an outreach program, Gear Up, that was adopted that helped improve the pipeline to Rio Hondo College. And then my wonderful colleague and comadre, Norma Garcia. Sorry. We have a lot of Normas in the city. So Norma Garcia, my comadre, took over in 2009 when I ran for mayor and has just taken it to a whole nother level there at Rio Hondo. So it's been a labor of love there. And then we're seeing the changes, especially now with the statewide initiative on Prop 209 repeal, a lot of things coming back from that area. 2009, during the Great Recession, the city of Armani had laid off about 1/4 of its workforce, had closed a fire station and laid off 17 officers. And a number of folks approached me and said, you know what, we need some new leadership here. And so I made a run for mayor. Now, I hadn't served on the city council. So when I got elected, myself and Norma Macias got elected that same year. And there were 3 people that were carryovers, if you will. At that point, I was, I think, perceived of as an interloper. What the heck was I doing there? I was 34 years old. And many of the folks that were on the council actually saw me grow up. Emily Shigaki, I had advocated before her once for music programs in our elementary school district when I was in choir. The other member, Patricia Wallach, had been mayor when I was in my first years of college, and she had judged one of our speech competitions that I was in when I was a freshman.
Oh my
These folks had known me, and all of a sudden they saw this guy who's, you know, right behind the ear, and what is he thinking, and how's he going to be telling us what to do? It was very challenging at first, trying to get a consensus for the direction that I was hoping we would go in. They had fortunately started a process of updating the general plan, which ultimately was approved in 2011, about 2 years after I came on. But that general plan really opened the doors for a lot of the development that we're seeing right now. They also had some redevelopment projects that had been in the works for a long time but hadn't been moving really effectively enough. And then, as you all know, redevelopment went away in 2013. And that was devastating for a city like ours, where we weren't able to acquire properties, put them together, and see a vision of a development that we would like. So at this point, since then, we've really been forced, like so many, just to sell the virtues of our community and hope that we can get the investment in there. A few things have changed with the federal tax code. We have opportunity zones now. There's 3 opportunity zones in the city of Armani, which is a good thing. But the regulations were just finalized, I believe, last year, end of last year. And there's still not the kind of investment that we would want to happen right now.
Mayor Quintero, can I stop you right there a little bit? I'd like everybody to understand what opportunity zones are and how they can truly benefit
the community.
The community.
Yes, thank you. So we have federally designated zones, 3 census tracts, where if you invest in them, you can defer your taxes or even maybe have them forgiven, depending on your strategy. But you have to hold on to the property for a period of time. There's a partnership that you can with the property owners that are there now. It's a tremendous tax benefit. I thought that there would be funds that would be created and that they would be looking for these zones and just putting the money in. That's just not happening. I've talked to so many folks, and we've even gone to a real estate seminar for USC. You know, they have their real estate division.
Exactly.
And we had our city manager, assistant city manager, myself, making a pitch for our community. And we tell them very clearly, it's hard to invest in a city like Los Angeles. There's just so much bureaucracy. There's so many things that you have to deal with. In small cities like ours, we're a lot more nimble.
Yeah.
You don't have a huge staff, a huge bureaucracy. But still, despite that, we just still haven't seen the kind of investment we would want. And I'll talk a little bit about a little more about that in just a moment. But we do have those 3 opportunity zones, and we Forrest Gumped our way into them. It wasn't something that I think we were intentional about. But now that I understand the value of them and the opportunities that could be created, I think I would do some things a little differently because we have to unlock that kind of investment. There's a number of topics that I'll go through tonight. And one of them, and I'm going to digress for just a moment, but you'll see where I'm going with it ultimately. What we're now, because of this pandemic, one thing that we've found happening in our city is that our sales tax revenue, other revenues have gone down, but our sales tax revenue is actually going up.
Oh.
And so you ask yourself, why is that? And I asked our finance director, how is that possible during a time of a pandemic? Well, before the pandemic, if you're a resident of Armani and you wanted to go shopping, where would you go? A number of our residents would go to Duarte or Highland Park or West Covina, right? But because of a pandemic, they're not going anywhere. So what are they doing more and more? They're shopping online. So we're getting, not only are we getting the point of sale, but we're getting the extra half-cent sales tax for all those products.
Excellent.
As a result, our sales tax hasn't gone down as dramatically. During the Great Recession, we were losing about $12 million a year for like 5 or 6 years. We were able to overcome some of that by having a half-cent sales tax, which brought in a portion of that. But those cuts were devastating. And as you know, for so many years, especially when we had redevelopment, what would cities chase? Cities would chase the sales tax, the retail sales. If we condition our residents to do more online sales, then maybe we can focus on development that brings other added values to a community, whether it's a manufacturing, which increases the types of quality jobs, or entertainment venues or activities that bring families together. Now, I understand during a pandemic, that's not something you necessarily can do, but we're eventually going to come out of this. And when we do, how do we shape that space within our community? Entertainment venues like a Sky Zone where kids can just jump around and have a good time, or family oriented businesses. We just opened up Progress on Main, which is the latest kind of like bar, nightclub, fun activity.
On that.
Yeah, we
Share
would
with
love
us
to
with
hear about that. We've read about it, but not everybody here has.
Yeah, the design is incredible on the inside, and it's going to be a really happening place for young folks, young professionals to come in, and or anybody for that matter. They just go in and have something to drink and spend some time together. And unfortunately, it opened right during this pandemic. Right. So it was like literally open for 2 days, and then it closed right back up. But again, eventually we will come out of this, and when we do, that pedestrian mall area is going to be significant. And what we do with it, with the Gateway Project, which is a project that's happening right next to the bus terminal, where we have some affordable housing, market rate housing is being built there, and there's going to be some additional amenities near the bus terminal. There's so much that I would love to talk to you guys about. So when I was oh yeah, go ahead.
Being the revitalization of that well-known bus area, the transit area. Tell us a little bit about that and how much that's impacted El Monte.
Yes, so I wish I could have been part of the decision-making to actually improve the bus terminal. But after that was done, the area around there was, it's an important part. I think something like 70 acres that are potential for development and growth and housing and hotels and other types of amenities. So long-term, it's going to be a destination point, not only for our residents, but for the region as well. And that's the idea. We want to welcome people into our community. El Monte has such a rich history. We're right in the center of the San Gabriel Valley. And there's so much history that this city has participated in since its inception and even before its inception. So we're really looking forward to that development. There's a lot of conversations around transit-oriented development by the state, affordable housing, market rate housing, trying to find housing for young professionals. You know, my generation, so many of us had such student loan debt that after graduation, we went to go live right with our parents. And that has happened since then. We want to give, my mom likes to say, queremos estar juntos, pero no revueltos. Roughly translated means we want to be together, but not mixed in together, right? And so we want to be near our parents, but we don't want them encroaching on our space and vice versa, right? Yeah. So we need to have affordable market rate housing for the young professionals to come back into our community. And because we have that bus terminal there and the Metro Link, for young professionals who want to maybe work in downtown LA, I work in downtown LA, and then be able to have that kind of that suburban experience, the disconnect from an urban type of environment. We want to be able to give them the best of both worlds. They have their ability to be in a bedroom, a community, or a community that's not as urban as LA, but be able to access Los Angeles. And a lot of our folks do have work in LA or in that direction, and because of the transportation services we have, it's affordable. I mean, the folks that live in the affordable housing units that have been built, you can literally get up, go downstairs, get on a bus, and go wherever you want. And that's kind of an exciting.
Huge for the community.
What's dynamic about Armani is its centralized location. I mean,
yes.
What, you're 10-15 miles from downtown LA.
Yes.
But in essence,
so
you need that transit. You need that transit assistance, because the 10 freeway can become a nightmare. The 60 freeway as well, which I know is adjacent, is that can all be very congested. So to get these young folks near these transit opportunities is ideal with affordable housing.
And I take the bus. I've taken the train regularly to go to work. So I know that it's a very common thing for a lot of working folks to use this public transportation. Unfortunately, during this COVID pandemic, there's a lot more fear about it because of the closeness to others. But again, we're eventually going to emerge from this. Next to the bus terminal is an important area, our pedestrian mall. Unfortunately, many years ago, at some point, the city's leaders decided to bifurcate Valley Mall Boulevard, which it was formerly called, until we recently renamed it Main Street, but bifurcated Valley Mall Boulevard with Valley. And by doing that, they created a situation where people didn't have to interact with that space. When I was in undergrad, by the way, this was a big motivation for me as well. When I was in undergrad, I studied under Ron Loveridge at UC Riverside. Ron Loveridge was a longtime mayor of.
Good friend of Kim's.
Yeah,
very good friend of Kim.
To death.
He was incredible and very inspirational. I took a local government class with him, and he recommended that I go study. I had to do a paper on, and you guys, some of you that remember, especially this group, will remember Bob Bartlett, Mayor Bob Bartlett from Monrovia. And he got elected in 1974, first time, with two other people, a male and a female, and they call themselves the Team. Together, they started doing some very effective things with redevelopment, with planning, just doing some incredible things. And if you see the trajectory of that city, that was 46 years ago. Where that city is now, with its pedestrian mall, it's just exciting. The housing that's there, the activities, the market night. I mean, it is transformed in such a magnificent way. And I know it wasn't just him. There were a lot of other people involved. But that took 46 years to see what we see now. Yeah. So even now, when people say, oh, we need this, and we need this, and we need this, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. Do you realize, and I tell them, you just gave me a majority on the city council a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Well, up until that point, it was like trying to fight for a vision, but not having that kind of robust support that I have now. And so now that we're at this point, trying to keep protecting the political will to keep moving the ball forward. And that includes affordable housing. I remember when Jay Gomez, former council member, tried to introduce an inclusionary housing ordinance more than a decade ago. And there was just incredible pushback against any type of affordable housing. We have enough poor people here. We need wealthy people here, but it's not. We have wonderful corridors, Lower Azusa, Peck, Santa Anita, Ramona, Valley, Garvey, where you can have higher density housing with mixed use and have a lovely, lovely neighborhood and community and do so much more, not just for housing, but also for the activities of the neighborhood. And if you want to attract retail, they want doors. They want people that are going to interact with their spaces. So there's so much, and I'd love to have done it 10 years ago, but it takes time to be able to make this work. Right now, we've been working on a Garvey overlay zone that will help allow for greater density, and that will have the mixed use types of activities, and that will hopefully help us to redevelop Garvey. I mean, Garvey's a lovely street, and we can do so much more with it if we can attract the type of investment that we've been looking to do.
Now, when you say Garvey as redevelopment, and realistically, so people on here understand in the political aspect, when we say we're going to redevelop an area, what's the time period? Because you kind of alluded to it earlier. What's the time period that it takes to get this into reality, so to speak?
If we get the investment, we can do it tomorrow. The challenge is really creating, cultivating that idea of investing in this community. Unfortunately, we have a lot of folks too that land banked in our community, bought properties. They think they're worth a lot more than they actually are worth, and are unwilling to really do anything with them. I mean, I've talked to one property owner. He's such a, I'm going to say it this way, but I say it affectionately because I speak to him regularly, and I have some affection, grown to appreciate him. But an almost 85-year-old, very cantankerous old guy who's got a tremendous amount of properties here. And when I ask him about, considering selling one of them to the city for a park, it's like, well, I don't want to have to pay all those federal taxes. So it's a challenge to unlock some of those properties. Obviously, we can condemn property for public use,
Sure.
But in the 10 years I've been here, we have not used that eminent domain power at all. Even when we had redevelopment, we were acquiring things under the threat of eminent domain, but we never went through with it. Not like, for example, the Alameda Corridor East, who very effectively has done underpasses and had to go through the process of condemning properties and so forth. So it's challenging to unlock some of those properties to get them to develop. Everyone thinks that they're sitting on a $5 million property when it's probably worth $500,000. Even within the redevelopment of the Santa Fe Plaza, which is a development that took place on Santa Anita Valley, there's a hodgepodge. There's a couple properties that we never acquired, and so they stick out like a sore thumb. And unfortunately, like anything, if you've got a really strong foundation, you can really build from there. We did not, when I first came on board, did not have a strong foundation, so it was challenging to get to where we did. And despite that, though, we were able to build the Santa Fe Plaza and create the opportunities in the Gateway Project area that are going to continue to flourish over time. We also have industrial space that's being developed in our city. Goodman Logistics is in our community. You can tell their properties because they have this neon green paint. You can't miss it on Lower Azusa. They took over a property that was formerly owned a Safeway or Vaughn's, right? Their first big tenant is Mutual Trading Company, a Japanese company, one of the largest importers and distributors of Japanese food and supplies in all the country, and they're consolidating 5 locations into one here in Armani.
Fantastic.
So there's just so much. We've got commercial developments, manufacturing developments, single-family homes, multifamily homes, townhomes, condos. It's just what I pride myself in over the last few years is trying to help facilitate the development. Understanding sometimes that it's going to be rough for people. I'll talk about one housing development in particular on Bannister. It was going to be 22 units, turned out to be about 18 units, single-family detached homes on a property that was not the easiest to develop, and on a street that was really not even a dedicated street to the city. It operated as a street up until a certain point, and it had been truncated, closed a portion of it. The neighbors were up in arms. They came to the meeting and they were not having it at all. We know that we need more housing, and we know that the greater good demands that we be creative and work on more housing. It was very tough having to articulate that to our residents. Now, if you go there, the houses that they built, lovely. They're selling for more than $750,000 in the city of Almani.
Driving up the value for the neighborhoods.
Absolutely, thank you.
Exactly.
The street was opened up. So now from Lambert, you can go to Bannister and all the way around and get to the school, Durfee School. And you know, eventually the whole street is going to have to be improved. But even the neighbors who said to the developer, no, we don't want you to improve our part of the street. We don't want any of that. Okay, now they see how the other side was improved and it looks lovely. And they're like, okay, we want it now. It's like, no, it's too late. Now it's going to cost all of us because you were unwilling to go along with that. So it's challenging sometimes. I'm not a big, I stand up when I hear the NIMBYism. It happens all the time. And you got to work through it. It's sometimes very challenging. I was a big supporter of Project Room Key. Other cities were not very supportive. You got some people pushing back. But on the one hand, you have residents that say, we have too many homeless people. We're seeing all these homeless people. What are you doing about it? And then when you support a project like Project Room Key that's providing housing for the unsheltered, there are people that complain about that. And you're like, wait, what's going on here?
Share with us a little bit about that, because homelessness is a crisis in most of our cities that are surrounding here in San Gabriel Valley.
COVID.
Yes.
We're dealing with
No
that.
COVID. We're all dealing with that.
We're trying.
How is the city of El Monte dealing with that?
So let me just speak briefly about Project Room Key, then Project Home Key, and then housing in general, affordable housing in general. So Project Room Key was an opportunity from the governor and the state legislature to fund the housing of unsheltered folks during this COVID to try to reduce the spread of COVID. One of our hotels here in the city was very open to the concept. They reached out to me. They actually reached out to a few of us on the council, and they were very concerned about their business because their business was going to be completely shut down, and they wanted some help. But they were open to this possibility. And actually where they're located is perfect because it really doesn't, it's not around a lot of residents, single family residents or multifamily residents. It's kind of in a more of a commercial area. So it was actually a perfect location. Let the county know that we were supportive of this concept there. They were able to have 50 rooms. Most of the rooms were able to be rented out over this period of time, and I think they're still in there right now, folks that were unsheltered previously. And the business owner applied for a grant from the city as well. We gave out grants to our businesses, as many as we could, $10,000 grants to keep them working. Also applied for other, federal assistance as well. And it's turned out to be very good. Now, is every resident there non-problematic? No, there are going to be challenges. But remember, I also, in addition to being mayor, I'm also a prosecutor for the city of LA. And I prosecute misdemeanor offenses. So I'm fully aware of the challenges that we have in the unsheltered population with the mental health issues that are prevalent. So the good news is they have a very good service provider there, the Salvation Army, and they've been able to work very effectively with our police department to try to identify issues and try to keep that from spilling over into the community. That's Project Room Key.
You brought up, I'm sorry, Andre Quintero, you brought up something that's not everybody here on the call knows, is that your real job, which I don't know how you juggle this, your real job is you are a deputy city attorney for the city of Los Angeles. You cover the Central Bureau of Los Angeles, which, if for many of you who don't realize that, is essentially City Hall and all of the areas surrounding City Hall.
Yes.
And
Large area.
that is tremendous. I mean, that's an overwhelming area, and the activity I'm sure that you have in that area alone can keep a herd of people busy. I don't know how you manage to balance that all out, but
well, I'm one of 2 arraignment deputies, so I handle out of custody arraignments and female custody arraignments. I get to see a wide range of different issues that come up in the area. But having that hat and that background has assisted me tremendously as mayor. In 2019, we had the lowest crime rate in 25 years in the city of Armani.
What do you attest that to? What do you attest the low crime rate to in your city?
You know what? I appreciate the question. I remember asking a former police chief during the Great Recession when the economy was down. I said, what can you attribute the fact that we have a higher crime rate? Well, it's because of the economy. And then when things got better, what do you attribute? It's because of the economy. It was that was the only answer every time. But what I do, we have our own police department, so it is a little more expensive when you have your own police department. But they're very effective at doing what they do. And frankly, since we've gotten this new police chief, he's been on for 5 years. He came to us from Baldwin Park. And one of the things I asked him, because this is something that is done in the city of Los Angeles, they have something called ComStat, where they monitor their statistics and they have conversations about them. And so I asked him, would you be willing to come to council meetings and share with us the crime stats for the prior month so we can see whether the trends are up, down, how things are going? And he started doing that. And we were able to, in real time, so to speak, see how we were doing. And when we started seeing upticks, we could try to have conversations about what kind of interventions we can engage in to try to bring that back down. And yes, AB, what is it? Oh shoot, I'm trying to remember the different, as you know, there are some changes in state law through the initiative, right?
Exactly.
Possession of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine used to be felonies. We would put people in state prison. No longer do that. They're misdemeanors. We're treating it more as a disease rather than a crime. And by doing that, I believe we're increasing our chances of hopefully dealing with the recidivism that comes with drug addiction. I'm a little different than some other prosecutors. There's other people that have very strong opinions about wanting to just put people away. I don't believe in that. I want to deal with the problem rather than just house it away for another day, because we eventually are going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So with your unique perspective as Deputy City Attorney for the City of Los Angeles, you're able to carry that over to the City of El Monte. You're able to work with your local police department, your police chief, and devise plans, devise programs. You have such a unique perspective in that regards that you can, and as Kim says, you mitigate a lot of these, the recidivism that could possibly or potentially occur.
And we're still in just the beginning stages of this. In LA, we have something called the Neighborhood Prosecutor Program. And I was a neighborhood prosecutor for 5 years. The county of LA doesn't really have something. They have the SAGE program, but that's geared more toward gang violence. I really think if you have a prosecutor assigned to your respective community, you can focus in on the quality of life crimes that may not be the felony types of crimes that most people think about, but a lot of times those misdemeanors can turn into felonies if you don't have appropriate interventions. And annually, we have about 400 recidivist offenders who are do misdemeanors more than once, and if not in the same year, in other years, subsequent years, but they keep coming back. And so by having someone designated as a neighborhood prosecutor, if you will, they can address the top 50 individuals. When they come into court, we're going to do an intervention. We're going to figure something out here so that we can hopefully change this pattern one way or another. But it has to be that kind of attention. The police, they can arrest every single person that they need to that's committing a crime. But unless you have the follow-up afterward, and that follow-up doesn't have to necessarily mean a prosecution. It could be a social worker team or some other intervention. When you hear about people who want to defund the police, a lot of times really what they're talking about is using resources differently to try to address those issues so that you don't have to have that very expensive police intervention. It's sometimes can be like a blunt force tool. You need it sometimes, but if you can figure out other ways to try to address those issues, especially like either with mental health, and we see that all the time, or drug addiction. Those are the two big areas that cause so many issues to arise in a community.
Now, all these issues affect us as realtors.
Absolutely.
And the reason they do is because it's if we have high crime, we have
Lower property values.
Lower property values, everything else that follows suit. We have homelessness. The homelessness brings down property values. So by tackling these nuances of your city, you're able to, in return, you're able to build up home value, build up property value, help the homeowner, help the commercial property owner increase and building community. Exactly. Building a safe community, building a safe community that people feel free to walk around in, to enjoy, to once this were lifted from COVID, they could go out, they can have their meals, they can have everything else and enjoy what the community offers.
Yes.
About COVID, I was speaking to Bill Rue, who's on our call.
Yes.
I was I'm interested in hearing how during COVID, we all know that landlords are affected and that tenants are affected. How are you actually dealing with, what have you implemented recently? If you wouldn't mind going into that, I think is genius, and I know that our realtors would love to know about that.
Yes, happy to talk about that. First of all, I want to thank Bill in particular because he reached out to me, and so did Matt from the Apartment Association. And I've had folks who are property owners reach out to me at different times, and they're very frustrated as well. So you've got tenants who are having to stay at home, not being able to bring enough resources in to be able to cover. Although despite that, many have made the effort to be able to pay their rent.
Yeah.
But at some point, they're not going to be able to. And what we did is created a situation where once the moratorium is lifted, requires tenants to start paying 25% within the first 3 months, then 50%, then 75%, then 100%. I think part of the goal was to make sure that they were having conversations with their property owners early on, rather than waiting to the very last minute and then all of a sudden, you owe so much and you have no plan and there's no way for you to be able to cover that. We unfortunately can't print money. We have had a rental assistance program. We gave out $1,200 to about 200 families. We did it with a live lottery.
Wow.
So that they could see the numbers being picked and all that kind of stuff. We actually broadcast that. And the reason for that is there's always this perception that, unfortunately, that these politicians are just taking care of their own friends. And we wanted to make sure that we disavowed that as best we could so that people knew that we were trying to do the best with the resources that we got. We can't print money. The state can't print money. The county can't print money. The federal government, if they were to have a coordinated effort, they could actually figure this out on a larger scale. The HEROES Act is such an important thing to pass, and it's so unfortunate right now that it hasn't, because not only does it help individuals, but also helps the governments that are providing these services and have a reduction in revenue. So there's so much in that bill that could assist not just communities, but also our residents to get through this. We will never know what this could have been like had we had a really effective coordinated response at the national level. We will never, unfortunately, get to know what that could have been like. But we've been through other things before, whether it's HIV, whether it was H1N1, whether it was Ebola, whatever the case may be. We've never been through this. And unless you're 100 years old, this is new to all of us. We took so much for granted. We took that our government understood and how to manage all these things. We took this all for granted. And COVID, whether we like it or not, exposed a major national security issue for us.
Yeah.
Think about it. Why would I want to bring in a dirty bomb to the U.S. when all I have to do is bring a virus that tears down the economy?
Yeah.
I mean, it's on that kind of a scale that we have to be thinking. We have to be preparing in the future. Armani, with as large a population as we have, 115,000, we do not have a public health.
Mm.
We're a general law city. Pasadena is nearby. If we had an effective coordinated response and we had maybe something like this, maybe things could have been different. So I'm hopeful that as we develop the Armani 2.0 of the future, the government of the future, that we will have some of these plans now put in place so that we know what to do should this ever happen again. But I'm hoping that it doesn't for another 100 years, and it'll be on someone else's plate, not mine.
Amen to that.
Seriously.
Amen to that.
Seriously. So how do you see, because I see that you really handle things before they get to you, which is what
Unique.
Unique, but what we should all try to do. We should see it coming and learn. But so how do you see rolling out of this COVID? How do you see, where are you at, and what are you looking at?
So assuming I make it past November, because I'm up every 2 years.
Okay.
My hope is that what we will do is go through a very deliberate process of assessing each household and what their losses were, whether it was income, rent, property owners as well in the city, and then come up with a process for trying as best we can to make them whole, whether that's communicating that to our federal representatives and asking them for support. We've got a lot of people that have mortgages that some of them haven't been able to pay. To what extent can, through federal legislation, we have a process that puts some of that debt on the back end of the loan and assists people? Because, unfortunately, when we come out of this, if we don't have a plan, there's a lot of folks that are going to end up in bankruptcies. There are a lot of folks that are going to end up in really bad financial situations that they shouldn't have to be in because it was through no fault of their own. And so to the extent that we can help that, and also keep facilitating economic growth and development, which will also help with jobs and also help with the future trajectory of the city. I mean, this city, I like to say, has really good bones, but we have to build on it. We have so much potential to accommodate and to meet all our housing goals long term. And we want to be an example, a model for other cities in the not just in the San Gabriel Valley, but in the region. We put on the ballot an initiative, HN, that will allow us to build up to 500 units of housing over the next, I believe it's 10 years. It takes us, it's an authorization that removes us from Article 34. Article 34 is a very limiting, constitutional provision that affects a lot of communities. So we want to be able to show that we can do this, be a good example, and then share that with others. We've built, by the way, most affordable housing for veterans in the entire San Gabriel Valley, which for me is a tremendous honor because of the American Legion and what they did for me starting off. Joe Dunn was the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee when he was in the Senate, and he helped pass a bond for veterans housing. But that bond really focused on the type of housing like the West LA campus, Lancaster, Barstow, those types of facilities that were really effective for older veterans and the type of care that they would need. But new veterans that are coming out of the military over the last decade, they're younger, they may not be married, they want to be able to have housing as well, and they may not want to buy a house right away. They may want to be able to do something like this. We've got something like 200 unsheltered veterans in San Gabriel Valley. If every city had a veterans housing development, not only can they honor the people that were willing to sacrifice their lives for us, but they're also helping to give them a dignified place to live. And I think that's a valuable goal for every community to have.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have a difficult, maybe I would consider maybe a difficult question to ask you, but when it comes to housing, how much additional housing could the city of El Monte support right now? Let's say being built. And
I think easily 5,000 to 10,000 units throughout our major corridors. Obviously, going up more density, right? But if we do it in those major corridors where it doesn't affect single-family homes, we've got transportation routes that can accommodate folks. If we do the mixed use, we can add also commercial aspects to it. So I think we can do a lot more than long term. Obviously, this is not going to happen overnight. What we don't want to do is disturb single-family homes that we have throughout our community. We want to preserve that type of community as long as we can, because there's a tremendous value in that. People also like to have their space, right?
They do.
And unfortunately, in some parts of our community, there's a little bit of a hodgepodge of stuff. But if we focus on those types of corridors like Peck, Valley, Ramona, Garvey, Santa Anita, I think we can do a lot more. And maybe that's really ambitious, 10,000. That's also maybe redeveloping some of the areas that we have. But, you know, we need more housing. And it's not just here. It's throughout the San Gabriel Valley. And hopefully other folks will be as ambitious looking forward.
So we need investors. We need investors for El Monte.
Yeah.
There's property to be had.
Because we have a mayor that's willing to and ready
to support that.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's not just me. The city council too has, at least over the last few years, demonstrating that willingness to work with folks. And it's not easy. We had a project, the Palo Alto project. So they come to us and they say, okay, we want to buy this property. It was a Hollywood Housing, the nonprofit came to us. We want to build some housing here, affordable housing. You know, they gave us the specs, everything. We were all on board. We're going, we're moving. And then at the 11th hour, it's like, there's an issue with funding, with this, that, and the other. We had to do some value engineering. And then that's really when you find out how committed your city council is to seeing that vision through. Because things are never what you first see them as. They change, they evolve, things happen. And I remember distinctly when we were considering this that night, and initially it was like, forget it, we're done. And I was just like, wow, how are we going to ever get affordable housing if we're so quick to just reject it? We had to come back later on that evening to have a discussion, and ultimately it resulted in what we now see as the Palo Alto project, and it's a lovely project on Peck Road near Ranchito. And yes, there were some folks that didn't want it. Last night not last night, but 2 nights ago at our council meeting, there were some folks that were expressing some concern about some 100+ units that are being proposed on a former industrial site that is near a neighborhood. And there's some residents there that have been here for a long time. I mean, when I say a long time, I mean like their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents were in this area for a long time. And 5 comments: no, we don't support this. We don't want this. It's not good for the neighborhood. Who's proposing it? KB Homes, a very well-respected housing developer, right? So these are some of the challenges that we face, and some those folks are very active politically and they're very vocal. And so you got to ask yourself, how committed are we to helping facilitate this long term? And what can we do? So, and we're relying on the private sector to come in and say, hey, we're proposing this. And if you keep rejecting people and just keep rejecting people, then eventually the housing, the private investors are going to be like, you know what? We don't want to work in El Monte. We're done. We'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, someone wants to take my money.
And the more that happens, then the harder it is to try to make that case. And so what I've tried to do as mayor is to develop that credibility too with the development community and say, hey, you know what? I'm a reasonable person. I can work with you. Let's see what we can do. Obviously within the confines of the law, obviously within the confines of what is possible. Let's see what we can do. I'm open. Let's have that conversation. And having the planning background really has helped tremendously. Having the legal background has helped tremendously as well. Of 25 elected officials you can have in the city of El Monte, there's only one that's an attorney, that's me. There's another person who graduated from USC Law. He's a social worker. He's on the school board, you know. And we have one person who's got a realty background, that's Cindy Wu, the only Asian elected official, El Monte. And considering the demographics of El Monte, I'm embarrassed by that statement. But I supported her. She got elected in a part of the community that does not have a majority of Asian voters. So building those coalitions. By the way, I'm part of. I tell them this with pride. I'm part of a group of about 18 people in El Monte. Remember, I told you about Bob Bartlett. who
Yeah.
got elected with 2
Right.
people, and they call themselves the team. Well, there's about 18 people, elected officials in Armani. We call ourselves Team Armani. And and we work together, and we have majorities on all the school boards and the city council.
Awesome.
And we collaborate together. It's not always roses and sunshine. We're also one of few cities, and I'll tell you this very directly because we just announced the scores yesterday. We're one of few cities that is now welcoming of retail cannabis and manufacturing, cultivation, distribution of cannabis as well in our industrial zone. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well. Hopefully, we'll be the first to be able to have a legal market in the San Gabriel Valley. I say first because Pasadena's unfortunately got their challenges with their market and the litigation that's been that they've been involved in. Pomona has an issue right now with an initiative that's on the ballot that's challenging kind of the ordinance that was developed by the city council in Pomona. So I'm really hopeful that we will. And if we do, and we have a strong market, then people will hopefully come from other places to come and not just shop here, but to spend time in our space. We're trying to make Armani a destination. And I know it's a little unorthodox. I've told you firsthand, I'm a prosecutor. When Proposition 64 was on the ballot, I was on the no side. And if you Googled me, you will see I was on the no side. But the voters of Armani, to the tune of 54%, supported it.
Yeah.
And so I had to say, okay, what do I do? Do I keep my head in the ground, or do I consider this? And if I consider this, what does that mean? So I immersed myself in everything you can imagine, whether it was retail, cultivation, manufacturing, the works, so that if we did go forward, we would have the most robust regulations to protect public safety in our community. And I was such an advocate or proponent of this that I was asked to do a ribbon cutting of a retail location in Maywood.
Really?
And I did. And so I'm hopeful that as we redevelop some of these corridors, we'll see less alcohol establishments, liquor stores, things of that sort, and upgrade the kinds of facilities that you have, because it's not really great to have a liquor store underneath a high density
Absolutely.
Right. Right.
but maybe not a liquor store, but a wine cellar or a cafe or other types of things that can help bring people together.
Well, it sounds like you're very realistic. Whether we like or don't like certain things, if we can at least know how to work through it, I mean, it's going to happen, but we can work through it and make it a good thing. You know, we just have to, I just think identifying it and figure out how is the best way to accomplish this, and everybody benefits.
And be pragmatic. The regulations we have allow the police department at any time to turn on cameras or inside these establishments just to inspect them, just to look, to see, make sure that everything is being. That is for most of us, that would be a Fourth Amendment intrusion that we would go absolutely ape about. Can you imagine in any of your businesses if you had cameras in there and people can watch you while you're working? That wouldn't happen. But because of the nature of the business, because of the transition from a black market, legal market rather, to a legal market, some of those regulations are necessary. And I am a firm believer that the more legal establishments we have, they will also point out the illegal ones and close them down. We've had a number of seizures of plants, and also situations where people were buying homes for $500,000 cash, closing it, not using it for what it's intended for people to live, and cultivating and doing things, manufacturing,
right,
in a way that increases the insecurity or the potential damaging of that neighborhood.
Exactly. I mean, that's when you have situations like that comes in, that can uproot a community.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It can truly harm a community. We have, I know we have some folks.
We did earlier on, we talked about, we had a question or a comment coming in from, I believe, Helen. We were talking about property values and, you know, the NIMBYs and, oh no, don't do it. But it really eventually it does promote property values. And I think that I wanted to mention, yes, we should really promote that, because it really does. it does raise our property values when this happens. You know, if you're in a dying little neighborhood and new homes come up beside you, it really helps us. I mean, it's needed and it helps our property values.
Exactly.
And we just need to be educating the people that are like, no, to, okay, it's going to happen. So let's look at the pros instead of fighting it. Let's educate to why and how it's really going to help.
And it helps now that we have these projects, it helps to showcase that as well. So when I'll give you an example where that Bannister project is now, we have really good comparables. If someone wants to develop, maybe they have a half-acre lot, which is very common in that part of the community. You can build 2 homes, right? Can you imagine on specs just going to the bank and saying, I'd like to borrow $1.2 million.
Right.
Well, we're concerned about this. This won't sell. Actually, there's some homes just around the corner that sold for $769. So I'm being conservative with $1.5 million value. I'm asking for 1.2. That's an 80% loan to value ratio. I should be able to develop that without a problem.
Excellent. Hey, speaking of education, and this is a little bit divergent, a little bit off of the real estate end, but tell us a little bit about El Monte's promise.
Woohoo.
Would you mind sharing with this? This I think
know we might
brilliant.
run over. Are we okay, Nancy? Are we good? We have a couple extra minutes. We good? Okay.
I'll be quick. So that is taken on so many different understandings. But our hope, when many years ago there was a group of us, young professional, we were Latinos, so the young professional Latinos who got together, and we wanted to help our young people get to 4-year universities. Remember, I was a trustee at Rio Hondo College. And so we started off with this notion of trying to figure out a way to pay the first 2 years of college. That didn't pan out for us, but Rio Hondo College figured out how to make that happen. So we're trying to go back to the way we used to be, way back when people were going to the UC and CSU, and it was next to nothing to pay for that.
Right.
So that when they come out of education and they're in the workforce, paying more taxes, they could buy a home, they could do the kinds of things that we all want to do, and that add value to a community. So, but we do have a foundation. Previously, we had a site-based initiative in our city that was done by the California Community Foundation, where they wanted to invest a certain amount of money into the community and different things. Ultimately, after 10 years, they settled on a few things, and one of them was the creation of the Armani Promise Foundation to help families save for college. Doesn't matter how much families save, because the average family in El Monte makes under $45,000 a year. They're going to qualify for all kinds of assistance, whether it's at the UC or now USC. But it was creating in the imagination of the child and the parents that they could go to college. By saving for college, we matched some of those funds, and their children are 7 times, some studies have showed this, that their children are 7 times more likely to go to college if their family saves for college. So we opened up a savings account when our daughter was still not born yet, okay? And and we got an account out of Nebraska because that was really where the best deals were at the time. And we see that. You feel more vested in the future of your child when you're investing in them. And think about that message that goes when your child is graduating to say, a hardworking person who was able to just put pieces together over the years, a little bit here, a little bit there, it gets matched, and to say, mijo, I've been saving since you were in kindergarten so that you can go to college.
Nice.
What a powerful statement to be able to make. And it's not a lot. Maybe it's $5 a month. Maybe it's, $10 a month. But the mere act of doing that gets them more engaged in the process.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's appreciated. It's appreciated by the children. The children come out of high school, going into university. They come out of university wanting to give back.
Yes.
Appreciating what not only the family has done for them, but the community has given back to them, and it pays back. It comes back to the community tenfold. So, listen, Mayor, we've kept you for an hour. We truly appreciate
I wish I could go on. Bill looks a little tired. think
Bill. No, I love it. I love it that you have the bow tie. I miss you, but I love seeing how sharp you always look.
Yes,
That's my trademark. The bow
there you
tie.
go. We're so blessed.
Big
We're so
hug,
blessed.
Bill.
We're so blessed to have a great team
My
here.
eyes are red because of the smoke that's been around. It's really got.
oh yeah, yeah.
It's bad.
Well, folks, thank you all so much for your time, taking an hour out of your
Yeah,
very busy schedule.
Yes,
And thank you so much. We truly
It's my pleasure. When we can do this again, maybe in person, I would
hope
love
so.
to. And
Yeah.
to the extent that we can in the future, and we'll have charts and maps and things of that sort, so that because I know that there's a lot of folks that are interested in investing. You all have people that you know and things of that sort. And as we shape this vision of the city's future, we need private investment to want to be here.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Mayor Quintero.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Be safe.